Hello YouTube, this is Sadako24 and this is just me doing a video of my thoughts about the news of Russell T Davies' return to Doctor Who. Now, as many of you know, Russell T Davies was a classic Doctor Who fan who achieved some fame and success in the TV industry with dramas such as Queer as Folk and The Second Coming, and finally gained enough clout to helm the show's 2005 revival. He was executive producer of the show and head writer for 5 years, and he oversaw the reign of both Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant as the Doctor before leaving in 2010. Now it seems like the show's in trouble, with Chris Chibnall leaving the show and the BBC being stuck to find a replacement for him. Russell T Davies has agreed to return to take the reins once again for Series 14 onwards. I want to make this clear from the start. I am not a fan of Russell T Davies. I became a fan of Doctor Who back in the early 90s on the strength of the repeats of the classic series. I remember I was happy with the news that the show was coming back, and from what I knew, Russell T Davies was a well-established writer who, by all accounts, should be good for the series. So what did I make of the comeback once it happened? I was happy with Rose as the starter story. It got me pumped. It got me behind the revival. Then the following week, End of the World aired, and I was less impressed. There was something about it that just felt too flippant. It seemed rather style over substance, and it really suggested to me that Russell was not really a fan of the story's sci-fi elements, and the whole story gave off the impression that he would rather be writing something else. The Unquiet Dead by Mark Gatiss was next, and it was a much better story. And for me, it was a story that set the standard very high, and it just seemed to make sense to me that this show would be aiming for that standard from here on. But then, the following week, we got the two-parter Aliens in London World War III, and I have to say, this is where it began to sink in for me that, despite my preconceptions, Russell T Davies was not a great Doctor Who writer. He was just treating the whole thing as flippant farce. I mean, there's a moment in that where Mickey runs towards the TARDIS as it's dematerialised. He runs through the TARDIS and hits the wall and does a pratfall. I mean, Mickey was treated appallingly in this story. By the end, I'd just given up trying to take it at all seriously. It just felt lowest common denominator. And worst of all, most of fandom was insisting the show had to be kept dumb for the masses, which frankly made me wonder what was the point of reviving the show at all if you're going to take away all its intelligence. Just to be clear, the stuff about the revival I liked, but there's a lot of stuff about it I couldn't stand, and a lot of it was down to Russell. I didn't at all like the way he wrote the Doctor as a belligerent Philistine. I mean, people praise Eccleston's Doctor, and I can get behind them when it comes to the stories he was in that were by guest writers, like Dalek and Unquiet Dead and Father's Day. But I really didn't like him when Russell was writing him. I mean, he just seemed to write him as a bully. So eventually Russell left and Moffat took over, and then Series 5 happened. And the show did seem instantly improved, and it really took until the Weeping Angel two-parter for me to finally feel reassured that the show was finally committed to solid plotting, with real stakes, and that it was done with the insulting viewers with cartoon logic or pixie dust resolutions. So was I completely happy with the Moffat era? Well, in the end, no. Once he started turning the series into the River Song Show, I began to stop caring. And I didn't want to stop caring. It kind of happened against my will. I was just like, well, look, I want to care, but I can't. I just lost the will to care. Then at the end of Series 8, when he revealed Missy as a new female incarnation of the Master, I pretty much threw in the towel. To be perfectly honest, I'd largely stopped watching already by the time Capaldi left. I'd lost investment in the show. I'm not sure even if a good Chibnall era could have got me invested again, but we got the Chibnall era we did. Now, a lot of fans have stayed on with the show, and they sat through the time as children, and that was, for them, the point where it was really damaged beyond repair for them. Now fans are starting to hope that Russell's return to Doctor Who will save the show. I mean, maybe it will, but saving this show is going to be hard work. I mean, Series 11 was bad, but if the show had ended on Series 11, it would still be in a somewhat salvageable state. But I don't think it's salvageable at all after The Timeless Children. It's going to take something of a genius and a miracle worker to fix that, and I've always been regarded as something of a heretic for believing that Russell T Davies is none of those things. As far as I'm concerned, the success of Doctor Who was always potentially in its central concept. There was always a potential for Doctor Who to be a great success again. You know, it could have been a success under anyone if they were shrewd enough. And Russell was shrewd enough to avoid some of the worst mistakes of the John Nathan-Turner era, but that's not exactly a high bar. I mean, a lot of fans seem to insist that the success of Russell's era was down to his focus on soap domestics and the companion's family life. A lot of them even act like Russell was the first to do it, as if Evil of the Daleks and the Keeper of Traken never happened. But it seems clear to me that the most celebrated parts of Russell's era, the Daleks, the Weeping Angels, the Empty Child, Sarah Jane's Return, the things that all the kids loved, they were all either by guest writers or they were revivals of stuff from Classic Who. Everyone says that Russell was careful not to alienate the casual viewing public with anything that was too murder in continuity or too funnish. But then there was moments like if you watch The Long Game from Series 1 as a casual viewer, you're left scratching your head about why the Doctor has such an animosity to Adam. It doesn't make any sense unless you understand what Russell T Davies is doing as a fan, which is basically he's doing this fanish exercise in Adric bashing by proxy. And the Doctor is written to say, oh, I'm the new Doctor. I'm too cool to be seen dead with another Adric. Which was just, good luck any casual viewers trying to figure that out. But the question is Russell going to be able to save the show from the state it's in now? Well, let's lay down a few home truths. If RTD was good at one thing, it was homaging the parts of Classic Who that, reminded fans why they'd once really been engaged by the show. I mean, maybe he can do that again, but to me, if we're to fix the retcon of the Timeless Children, we'd need a writer with a detailed plan in mind of how to fix it and where to go. And Russell T Davies is not that. Russell has always been a by the seat of his pants kind of writer. That's what made his era so exciting and made it feel like a ride. At the very least, it redeemed the franchise from the suicide cult it had degenerated into the 1980s, giving the show a burst of energy and life. But solid plotting and foreplanning was not his forte. He frequently wrote himself into a corner and had to call on the Doomsday Machina ending to get out of it. There is some debate about the fact that Russell has actually said, he hasn't criticised the children here. He's actually said that he liked the era, he liked Jodie. I think it's indicative of just the way Russell has always seen the show. I think Russell has always cared far more about whether the show is a rating success than whether the writing quality is actually good. So I don't see it as surprising that the bad writing that we've seen in Series 11 or 12 doesn't bother him. He's never cared. Russell is the kind of fan who only really cares about if the show avoids looking like the embarrassment of the 80s again. On that score, he can enjoy and praise Jodie's era. The final hope, of course, is that those who are burnt by the Timeless Children, they hope Russell won't do that. Russell respects the fans. I hate to break this to you, but Russell has never respected the fans. He has frequently in interviews referred to the fans as Ming Mongs. He has gone out of his way to create characters like Victor Kennedy just to villainize fandom. Frankly, Love and Monsters is one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. There are Jodie stories I'd rather watch again than that. In The Runaway Bride, Lance Bennett, who's going to get married to Donna, goes on this whole rant about how Donna's really shallow, she doesn't see the bigger picture, and that was Russell basically saying Lance Bennett is a villain because he's just like those fans who feel like the show needs to break away from domestics and actually explore the galaxy again. It was just basically written in just as a dig at the fans who wanted the show back to being an adventure show and not a bloody soap opera. I mean, Russell went out of his way to write into the show all the things that he knew fans hated. The Doctor having romantic relationships. The Doctor liking trash reality TV. I mean, think back to his revelation in the Sarah Jane Adventures episode Death of the Doctor, where Matt Smith returns, and Clyde asks the Doctor, how many times can you regenerate? And the Doctor responds, 507 times. Does that really sound like the man we can trust to retcon away the Timeless Children nonsense? No, if the Timeless Children nonsense pissed off the fans, and Russell likes stuff that pisses off the fans. He always has. As for the politics, that's not going to go away under Russell T Davies either. So I don't think it's going to be the great success again under Russell. I won't be watching. I had 5 years already of Russell T Davies, and by the end I'd had enough. I'll be sticking to the classics and clinging to my memories, like I always do.